Good evening and welcome to the first Formula Pi technical teardown. If you haven't seen round 8 already, stop this right now, go and watch round 8 and then come back and watch this because we are going to talk about what happened in the racing. There will be spoilers. You have been warned, okay? This is the first time we're trying this, so we're going to try and talk about some of the things that we saw during the racing. We're going to do this natty picture-in-picture thing. So if we look at our screens, it's because we're looking at different things and we're not, ignoring you or anything. But hi, welcome. Thank you for joining us. I am joined with Tim on my left and Aaron on my right, who you've heard me talking about on the feed, and I'm Claire, obviously, who you've heard me talking about on the feed, but you won't have actually seen their faces. So here they are. See, how wonderful. So tonight we're going to talk about two main things that we've got written down that we thought were worth talking about. If there's anything else you want to talk about, please pop it in the chat. I do have a chat here. I'm going to pop that out so we can see it.
Just going to take that away.
I'm waving a pen. Dangerous woman. Yes, so I've got the chat up. I can faces so that I can use this and not. Do we have a preference?
I'd like to see it.
You'd like to see your face?
Yeah.
Okay, fine.
Yeah, it's nice.
So what we've got here is you'll see behind our lovely faces in the top left-hand corner. You'll see that we've got the Formula Pi video from YouTube, which is over here. Ta-da! So I've basically just loaded the feed up so you can see what's going on. And we'll talk about what happened. So this is actually from session 1. This is last night. During Heat 1, which was SDSU versus Deep Purple. We saw this happen, and it's probably just worth talking about. I know we probably haven't really touched on it much, but I've got the pen again. So I'm going to play the video so we can just see what's happening and once this kicks off. What we can see here, down here with SDSU Robotics is they're parked up behind a robot. Now, challenge events are to do with avoidance and to do with going around robots and trying to get around. But as we can see, SDSU Robotics wheel, they're spinning, but they're not really going anywhere. So this is something that's worth talking about, I think. So the first question is, what does the original code have in? I don't know who's best to answer this question.
Mr. Churchill.
What does the original code have in to do avoidance on a kind of the simple level? What does it do?
So the standard code is basically looking for edges in the image, sort of where tyres are, things like that from the robots, which it's not expecting. So it's expecting to see red, green, blue tracks next to each other.
Okay.
And what it will suddenly get is, in the middle of a blue line, so there's a black bit there, where it's actually a robot tyre as opposed to the wall or part of the track. So it knows it's something it's meant to avoid like it would the wall. Because the image is a bit noisy, the way it works is it has a look at how many of these errors, if you would, it sees, and the more it sees, the more likely it thinks that there's a robot ahead of it and it needs to avoid it.
Okay, so it's looking for these black edges and it's trying to determine that that's an edge of a robot rather than the track.
So I'm just sort of recreating that there.
Okay.
What we
You're
really
looking at
have.
the camera.
Yeah, I'm actually trying to recreate what's there.
Okay.
So what we have is the robot behind sitting approximately like that. So
Okay.
out of this camera, we're looking at the camera in the background, not in the foreground. So on one side we'd see fairly much black, and on the other side we'd presumably see some of the track, obviously with the robot in front of it.
Okay. So we had this discussion as well, with like how wide is the camera? Like, would the way that robot's configured there on the track, the way we've got it set up here, would that robot necessarily be able to make out a black edge on the right?
I think it would be able to see it, but it would be fairly far off to the side of the camera. So I think if you sort of imagine you're sort of seeing this sort of area on the screen, the problem with that is that sort of area would look very similar. So it's quite possible the robot thinks it's at the edge of the track, not that it's stuck behind a robot.
Okay, so that leads neatly on to the next question. The house code, I don't think, has anything in to detect when it's been stopped, or am I wrong?
It has a very simple mechanism which has proven not very reliable. What it does is it looks at frame to frame to see if there's been enough change to look like it's moving. So the idea is while the robot's moving, even if it's moving in a straight line with the track in a straight line, the robot bounces a certain amount. So it looks at those differences, it can see that the image is changing, so it decides it's moving.
Okay.
The problem with that is when it's stuck behind a robot like this, and we've seen this when it's stuck on the side of the wall occasionally, it bounces about trying to move, and that's enough to convince it it's moving when it actually isn't going anywhere.
Okay, so that's what we're seeing here is this wheel is causing, it's basically axle tramping, and it's causing it to just bounce up and down.
Yeah.
Okay, so a simplistic thing that you could do, I guess, is look at if there's a tolerance you could put in there to say, am I moving enough, and try to say, can I go backwards and maybe try again? That would be a simple fix, I guess. I don't know if there's anything more advanced.
There already is a threshold in there, isn't there?
Yeah.
But what there isn't is any sort of over time compensation for it being stuck in that position.
The next thing is a gain to say, okay.
Yeah, or some sort of accumulator that sort of gets reset when the track has the robot is obviously moving. There's a large amount of difference in the track.
Yeah.
Okay. So that would be one way of doing it. But I guess we see this quite regularly, and we see lots of robots do get stuck, and they sort of bounce about, and that's enough to say, okay, I'm still moving. And then you end up with this situation like we saw here with SDSU, where they just get stuck, and then that's it. There's nothing more they can do. So I guess that's the first point done. Tick. If you've got any questions for those that are watching, pop them in the chat, and we can do our best to answer them. We're going to stick to the 2 points that we found this week, but if there's anything that takes our interest, we will answer them as best we can. And again, for like future weeks, if there's anything you want us to focus on, we can try and find some video from the old races and see if that backs up footage as well. If you can give us a timestamp, that'd be even better, so we can just go back and review it straight away. So yeah, questions, if you want them, pop them in the chat, we'll see them. Is there anything else for width of camera, or is that basically it? Is that really all there is to it?
Yeah. That's all I can think of, yeah.
Cool. All right, so let's move on to point number 2, which doesn't happen that often, because it's quite rare that the robots get stuck in this way, but if it does happen, then it's just unfortunate. But again, this is another thing about getting stuck, isn't it? So let's find the timestamp that I found. We were about here, I think. Okay, so this is again session 1, but this is further heat on. This was heat 3, 4, possibly? No. 2. Wow, we've stuck to the early heats for the footage. This was something that happened to Chitty Chitty Pie Pie, I believe. We're looking at their heat now. I'm just going to play it so that it plays on. Chitty Chitty Pie Pie are green and Team Crosshead are red. And I think actually it's Crosshead we're going to be looking at here and focusing on. The red robot in the middle of your screen here. All of a sudden, boom. It gets stuck on top of a static robot and it cannot move. A lot of the time when we see this happening in racing, robots get pitched up on a robot and then the wheels will keep spinning forever. I'm just going to pause it there because they're actually both doing it, which is nice. So what we'll see here, well, if we let this run, you'd see that the wheels are spinning and it's not really making any attempt to reverse, because a reverse might free it in this instance, maybe. Short of having a bump from another robot, that robot is pretty much stuck now and it will just stay there looking at the ceiling. So, as we know, the robots use the track. They look for the colours, they try to work out where the track is and which direction the track's going in. What happens when we see something that we don't recognise as track in the basic code?
Such as the ceiling.
Such as the ceiling, or a barrier, or something like that. Let's take my pen again.
So, from memory, the code doesn't per se check whether it's looking at a track, so that's one point. But what it does do is it tries to isolate the three colours and look for edges. If it can't find enough in the image that looks like edges, I believe it goes through to a later part of the code saying it can't find the track. I believe there is actually a pass-through that says it can't find the track, and there's a variable that's set in the global settings somewhere so that the race code loop can see that as well if it wants it. From memory, what the code does there, it's assuming it's sitting there facing a wall, I believe, at that point, because that was the most common circumstance when we were developing it.
So it'd see black and it wouldn't...
Exactly.
Okay.
So what the code does is it's supposed to then assume that it needs to move backwards and back out. So I'm I'm just wondering why the robot wouldn't. I'm wondering if the fact it's effectively upside down has an effect on this.
Okay.
Because if you see what I mean, the robot sort
backwards
of...
would be keep trying to drive straight into the robot. But not for what's googly-eyed?
That's Chitty Pie Pie.
Chitty Pie Pie.
Yeah.
Or Chitty Eye, as I keep wanting to call them. There's so many eyes. Okay, so it could be an upside down issue here that makes the code behave differently.
I guess if we play on, Chitty Pie Pie does actually come out of this, so that could be the case.
Yeah, so maybe when it's upside down like that, because I mean that robot there, you can see it's vibrating, so it looks like it's just constantly charging at that point, and it's still on flat chat going forward. But there's definitely, that camera must be recording a beautiful picture of the iron girder that's above it. So it does free itself eventually, but I think that was more from it just kept pushing and pushing and pushing, but it didn't appear to change direction when it did it.
So one thing that you could do to try and improve that, because another circumstance we see this where just straight reversing wouldn't work very well either, is when a robot is stuck on top of another robot that's also trying to move, and we see that sometimes where they're both sort of driving against each other. So what we could do is, if you've got a sustained period where you're stuck, it suggests you're not merely stuck facing a wall, you've actually gotten caught on something. Then maybe, for example, driving forward for a bit and then driving backward for a bit, or trying to steer for a bit, but basically changing what the wheels are doing every so often might be enough to wiggle a robot loose when it's stuck like that as well.
So is there a wiggle routine in the base library? I'm just thinking, def wiggle.
No, there isn't, unfortunately.
Okay.
No, I didn't occur when I was originally writing.
So maybe that's something that people could do then, is write a wiggle and have a proper go at getting out. If you detect that you're stuck, then have a wiggle routine that just does some sort of random movement to see if you can free yourself from being stuck. That might be a nice thing to add in if you haven't got it already. I don't know how long we've been online now. I've lost sight of all sorts of spatial awareness. 12 minutes that's taken us to get through that. We didn't know how long it was going to take us to talk about those 2 points. So not a hugely long session. Is there anything else that either of you two wanted to talk about that we haven't spoken about, either on the commentary or in the feed?
I can't remember which robot it was, but from tonight's session, one of the later robots seemed to get itself into a pattern of driving up to a robot, realising there was a robot in the way, backing up, and then immediately driving back into the same robot.
Yes, I know which one. I think that was Pie Hard. I think that was the last heat we had. Let me go and find that. Boop, 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 boop. Excuse me a moment whilst I navigate YouTube. And there were 2 technical teardown things because I couldn't work out how to work the thing, because this is all new to me. And I'm doing this at the last minute. I think this was Pie Hard that had the back forth. See, look, my face was there as well. I was like, I had a duplicate face. I think it was Pie Hard that had the back forth, if I remember rightly. Because they came in very slowly and it was quite relaxed. And then let's open it up so you can all see. Yep, so we're going now. So, because they seem to come in quite slowly. That was the green one, yeah. So they come in, go forwards, come in, and they were back and forth. I think it was Pie Hard in this race.
It was.
Yeah. So, what's your opinion on that?
So, I'm assuming what that's suggesting is that the code is working as intended. The problem is the routine for trying to get round the obstacle has failed to get round it, and it's then repeating it indefinitely. But there we go.
There we go. So there's an example.
So,
oh, Tim just changed the camera. Oh, there's the glitch. I think we've fixed that now. Anyway, we can talk about that in a minute. But yeah.
So, what I suspect is necessary is a piece of code which effectively keeps an eye on the overtaking logic or the sort of recovery logic, whichever piece it is it's repeating, to see if it's looping over and over again, not getting anywhere, and maybe running a more severe reverse and turn around something a bit different, in the hope that a slightly different strategy would free you, rather than repeating the same thing until the obstacle's pushed out the way or another car's moved you.
So it's a case of having a basic avoidance that just does a simple thing, and then having like an uber avoidance that's kind of like, basic avoidance hasn't worked 3 times now, I should probably think about trying uber avoidance to see what happens.
Yeah.
Because there are quite a lot of competitors that use that strategy of avoidance, where they find a robot, they come in, they reverse out, they go back in again.
Yeah.
So it's quite a common overtaking strategy. It works really well, I think, especially if you're in a race and you've got moving traffic. I think you don't get so much problems like this with static stuff. But yeah, definitely, I think that's a good point.
This would be a good solution for a pile-up, for example. When we've got 3 or 4 robots that collided with each other and trying to get around.
Yeah, that is a good call.
We can talk about the going into the gravel.
We can talk about going into the gravel. So sorry, Sheldon's Fury. So sorry. That's not happened before. Like, you were pitched up on a robot, and then that was it. You were off, and that was your track. Then you were off into the gravel.
Several times before. What do you mean?
Yeah, but not through actually using a troll bot as an ejecting mechanism off the track. It's been robot. It's been legitimate robot and robot action rather than a troll bot ejecting a competitor into the gravel. That was definitely the first time we've seen that, I think. Yes. Is your robot okay?
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay, good. Yeah. It's worth checking. Because we were a bit worried.
That little plinth that it's sitting on is actually stuck down to the track.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's heavily stuck down because I didn't want that robot to get hurt. So
excellent. Well played. I think you've done well there. That could have been. I was so worried. I was like, it's gonna come up. It's gonna fall. It's fine though. Everything's okay. I guess that's about it then. There's no more questions from anybody else, and everyone's being very quiet. So yeah, you're welcome, Pico. Anytime, mate. We thought this would be more useful than a blog because we literally don't have the time. We'd love to be able to write something really informative, but we just don't.
It's much easier for us to do something like this than it is for us to find some time and sit down and write a blog and actually get it out. So I think if everyone's liking this format, this is probably something we will keep doing. So let us know whether you like it.
Give us a thumbs up in the likes and send us a comment. That'd be great. And yeah, we'll try and do this once. I think probably after both sessions have run. I think is probably the best way, rather than doing it after every session.
So probably after every challenge and after every race.
Yeah, we could do it after testing. Is it worth doing after testing? Perhaps.
Yeah, why not?
Because testing is legit. Like, I mean, because we see a lot of strategies in testing that we could talk about in terms of line choices and speed and, I think,
There is potentially one question.
Is there? Is there any plans to go beyond OpenCV 2.4?
Yes.
Aaron, over to you.
Yes.
Is there?
So ideally we want to move to both the latest copy of Raspbian, but we'd also like to move to Python 3. Python 2 is old and out of date now, so we'd like to move to Python 3, and while we're making all those changes, it would make sense to also move to a more recent copy of OpenCV.
Okay. So I think OpenCV is up to version 4 right now, because I built 4 the other day. I don't know what we're considering going to, whether we're going to go all the way.
I'm not sure. What I was going to do is check what's provided in the repos first, because that'd be easy for people to get, and if there isn't a more recent version in the repos, then I'll...
Where did I get it from? I definitely did an apt-get to get it, so
yeah, so
I'm assuming it's 4.
Then. Yeah, because building OpenCV is quite painful by itself.
Well, actually, that was my question. I have got a question now. I've got a question. How do we run OpenCV within Formula Pi? Because the way I have it set up on my Pi at the moment is it's a virtual environment run. So I do a work on, and I work in a virtual environment on OpenCV and then code in the environment. I'm assuming we don't do that for this because that'd be way too complicated. Okay.
No, so we've just pulled in the standard provided OpenCV library and Python wrapper for it from the Raspbian repos, and that's installed then for all copies of Python that are running on. So
I think I'm doing it slightly differently, just because I could.
That's fair enough.
I don't because I'm new to doing all virtual environments and stuff, and it was just the tutorial I found that seemed quite straightforward was kind of working through that thing, and I've done that for developing GPIO 0, so it's kind of that was my choice. But yeah, Yeah. So we will be updating to OpenCV something, and Python 3 probably next season, I'm guessing.
So
is there enough time?
That's the problem. So the code requires quite a number of changes to make it work. So one problem in particular is the latest copy of Raspbian doesn't support asking the camera for unusual resolutions anymore. So we'd have to actually ask for the closest real resolution the camera works at.
Okay.
So I'll need to make a few changes to make that work, make sure it performs all right. So it comes down to whether I've got enough time to be able to make the changes, test them, make sure everything's good, and then really want to be able to get them out to you guys with enough time for you to be able to make your own changes. It seems unfair to dump it on you a couple of weeks before we start.
Yeah. And also we'd be, I guess, because the previous code would be running Python 2, OpenCV 2.4, we would be not relying on the winner's code.
No.
Well, I mean, we could to a point, but unless they've written their code in a cross-compatible way, then there's little choice we'd have than to start with an E-based library and provide that code anyway if people want to upgrade it themselves. And I guess that's the way we'd go. Unless you're writing it for Python 3 and you can make it work for Python 2 as well, and you've got lots of fancy import statements, then well done. I
mean, I know we've got I think it's 3 or 4 teams now are already running Python 3 anyway, so that would make their lives easier. They wouldn't require a custom card for doing that anymore.
Okay, good. So there you go, James. Answered. Ta-da! So the system works. Any other business before we go? That was an interesting reaction.
What I am, I thought about the possibility of someone submitting different code for the final race round to what they've been using all season, therefore maintaining an advantage in not releasing the code publicly. So what I actually thought is that what we really should be doing is not just releasing the winning code as in the one that won that particular race, but we should be releasing the code of the season and sort of showing what people have done through the season.
That's quite an interesting point.
It is. So what I mean,
because did we see this?
I feel like
in
I can't just
years?
all of a sudden, this is what we're doing.
No,
but I would sort of put that back to you guys.
Okay, well maybe I could put that in the votes channel on the Discord.
Yeah,
that's what the votes channel's for.
Does everyone think that's fair?
I'll put a vote up tonight before we leave to see what people think about that in the Discord.
I don't think anyone's got that sort of intention, but it is a potential possibility for someone to do that. So.
Yeah, or I mean, it could simply be the case that their code has been quite ambitious through the season, and they've got through. I hate to say it, on luck. Like that. I mean, certainly in my racing career, I know it's on a bike, not on robots, but certainly there's a lot of luck that plays into racing as well as actually good coding skill. And even if you've got, you could have had the best code in the world and not necessarily win. You could have the worst code and come in first just because of the luck of the draw and how things go in the race. So even if you had quite ambitious code all the way through the season and you go, you know what, I'm going to revert back to a safe version for the final. That could happen. And then you miss on all that ambition and you can't discuss it and say, well, I was trying this and I was trying that. Yeah. Exactly like we've seen tonight, James Sheldon's Fury trying some HAR image detection stuff, clustering. Like, maybe he chooses not to run that in the final because it's a little bit, it's kind of had mixed results. Maybe run something safer. Then so I guess that's a vote.
The ultimate aim is obviously we want the baseline of the series to improve every season, and if we're just at the last minute going back to high speed code as opposed to avoidance, etc., then that's potentially a problem. The other option is to do the sort of entire race series based on points only rather than a final race. I'm not sure about that one. That one's a big discussion.
Like you've been running the other one, having no final.
Exactly, yeah. But it's sort of, it takes a little bit away from the at the last minute. It's all up for grabs. Yeah. But
Pico says, please don't judge the rules mid-season. No, that's why we're saying maybe. that's why we're discussing it, not saying we're going to do it. It's something to think about for future seasons, just because. Yeah. There's a point there as well from Pico. I'd love to see a totally open competition where all codes are shared. I'm kind of for that and kind of against it. Like, I guess I'm on the fence because some people are happy sharing code and happy saying, I'm doing this, I'm trying this, it's okay, this isn't working, this is working. And then there are some people who want to race, like, and they see it as being an advantage that they've got, like, I've got this routine that does this, nobody else has this, therefore that's my competition edge.
What I don't want to see, if you can imagine this whole collaborative thing where everyone's working on effectively the same set of code, and what we see is every week everyone's code improves, but everyone's running the same code against each other. I think that's potentially boring. So while the entire sort of setup could be shared and people can have that, that's kind of why I was trying to get to the end of a season, then the code gets shared. You do have at least some period of time where everyone's diverged in what they've written, the strategies they've gone through, and those ideas and strategies could be potentially useful next season on last season's winning code. So that was my theory anyway.
Okay, so Pico's example is this: is in Formula 1, everyone can see everyone else's aero bodywork, but every team still comes up with their own unique solutions. Correct, but nobody has access to the CFD. And that's what I consider the code to be like the CFD. Like, that's the magic, where you know exactly how every piece of aero body panel works. And being able to see what somebody's doing on their car is very different from actually being able to do it.
Yeah. In theory, you can back calculate what other people's code is doing.
If you can really get close to the car and have a look at it and really measure the things, but literally, if you were from a rival team and you rocked up to Red Bull with calipers and went, "Oi," and just tried to measure stuff, they'd be like, "Get out!" Really get out. So you can, I guess, it is the right metaphor, but I think what we're saying is you can look at other people's code and see the result on the track and try to work back and see what they're doing to make it work. And I guess that's kind of what we're going for. If it's completely open, we risk everybody being the same, which is that's the line we're trying to tread. So while I like the idea, it's difficult to then have a competition. It's then kind of, as Simon's just suggested, how about all finalists share their code? That's something we could do. If people wanted to, we could do that, but I don't know how we would.
I mean, everyone's free to share their code in the what do you call it?
In the Discord, but
channel.
It's not the ideal platform to share entire libraries. That's the thing.
Can we set up a private sort of repo? The idea is we kind of don't want this code being public, and
but repo where people can upload their code at the end of the season and say, "Here's what I did." But make it optional. Like, you really don't have to do it, but we can still keep the winner's mandatory rule of doing it. We could do that. We could think about doing that in future series. We're not going to say now because that's too much.
Is that one for Aaron?
Right, James is asking, my classifier seems to have only worked when flipped. Any ideas why? So James is using a HAR classifier for his detection of robot squares. I don't know if you've seen the Discord chats. I think you probably have. Yeah. Any ideas why it might not have worked the right way up?
That is curious. So I can only imagine it's managed to sort of latch onto the shape of that robot enough that it sees it as being different when the robot's the other way up. And one thing I'm wondering is, I think from memory, the camera image as it comes out of the camera to the pipe is actually upside down,
isn't it?
and we flip it in the code.
Yes.
So it could be something like that.
That might be. Yeah, that might be it. Might be worth looking into. I guess that we should probably call it a day, I guess, because we could
Yeah.
be here all night
Yeah,
just chatting
exactly,
away and
yeah.
shooting the breeze, and we've got homes to go to, and cats and interesting things like that. So how long have we been on for now? Half an hour. Crikey.
Perfect.
Yeah, okay, that's done. We're done. We're gonna have to love you and leave you because we're tired. And we've been here for quite a while. I can't even find the thing I just had up. There it is.
How do we stop it?
How do we stop this? It's because YouTube have changed to this beta thing, and I just have no idea where any of the buttons are anymore, and I don't know how to stop it. We were lucky we even stopped the first feed tonight, to be honest with you. I had no idea what I was doing. Right, so that's it. First technical teardown, done. We will do another one of these next week after the race on Thursday. We might be a little bit short because it is the day before we're sorting things out for Pie Wars. I imagine it's a big weekend for us starting next weekend. So I guess the wrap up is we'll see you tomorrow if you come into the Guild of Makers meetup. Tim and I will be there tomorrow. If not, we'll see you at Pie Wars. We're actually going to be there in person. So all three of us will be there. And Finley, I believe, our new hardware apprentice, is going to be there too. We have some very exciting things to show you when we get there. We've been building things. Well, not us. Finley's been busy building things. We've been looking on and doing this. It's been really good. So we'll see you at Pie Wars. Otherwise, we'll see you next week on the feed. Same time, same place. We'll do this again if you liked it.
Thanks, everyone.
So yeah, thank you, everyone.
Have a great night.
See you later. I've got to work out how to stop this now, so we might just sit here for a little bit. Just talk amongst ourselves. It's fine. I've got to work out how to stop it. Oh, look, there's a big end stream button. I think that's probably it. I think that's it. Bye.